Hey guys, welcome back. My name is London, and I am a mother, caregiver, advocate, and best friend to my daughter Autumn, who just turned 17 years old, and she's battling juvenile Huntington's disease, an extremely rare, genetic, progressive, neurodegenerative brain disease. Now, you may know Autumn and I from our TikTok page, at London and Autumn, or maybe you've seen us on Facebook. Or maybe you have no idea what I'm talking about. Maybe you're new here. Who knows? Regardless of your situation, thanks for being here. But if you do follow us, then you know there was recently an incident that happened at Autumn's school. Now, I'm not going to get into what the incident was, but a lot has happened since this incident. And if you're curious as to what this incident is, then I will put a link to the video that I am referencing, or videos I'm referencing, in the description below. Anyways, after this incident, it was clear to me that Autumn's teachers, paras, principal, everyone who was close to Autumn at school, they had no idea what she was going through. And they had no clue about juvenile Huntington's disease, how the disease progresses, the symptoms, the changes, the behaviors, all of it. They were clearly clueless because they didn't understand Autumn's behavior and how she was acting. And I know that her behavior was a reflection of the disease, but they didn't understand. So it was clear to me that I had to call in reinforcements. So I called my friend Lisa up, and she joined us via Zoom to give a presentation to the school about juvenile Huntington's disease and how they can support Autumn in the school setting. We recorded this presentation for people to use as a resource or a guide, or maybe if you just want to learn about juvenile Huntington's disease. Whatever your passion is. Either way, I hope that it's useful to you guys in some way, shape, or form, and I'm sure it will be. So without further ado, here's my friend Lisa Mooney from HDSA's Center of Excellence at UC Davis on supporting juvenile Huntington's disease in the school environment.
So my name is Lisa Mooney, and I am a licensed clinical social worker for Huntington's disease specifically right now. I work at the UC Davis Center of Excellence for Huntington's disease, but I'm also the, Northern California chapter social worker and the Bay Area chapter social worker. Anyways, I've been doing this a long time. I am located in California, which is why I'm coming to you via Zoom. So it's nice to meet you all today, and thank you very much for taking time out and being here so you could learn about what Autumn is going through. So I'm going to talk to you today about juvenile Huntington's disease. That is what Autumn is facing today, or well, this lifetime. So this is just going to be a little bit about what we're going to go over. So I'll go over very quickly the medical side of things. If there's anything in the medical side of things that you want me to go over more in depth, I totally can do that, but I don't want to bore you with all the medical stuff. And then we'll talk about the needs and support that you guys can provide while she's at school. And then obviously I have references and resources as well. Like I said, please interrupt if you have questions or concerns. Let's see. So JHD is a genetically inherited, what we call neuropsychiatric disease. It is progressive. So someone with Huntington's disease will never be able to regain sort of anything that they have previously lost as far as skill set or cognition or anything like that. So it is something that is, we all have the Huntington gene in our DNA, but those of us that are people like Autumn have a gene expansion. So most of us have a quote unquote, what they call normal gene expansion. And those with Huntington symptoms will have an expanded. And they think that expansion of those CAG, the protein repeats is what causes the symptoms and the problems associated with Huntington's disease. There is a 50-50 chance of inheriting this gene from an affected parent. So you only have to have one parent with a gene expansion in order to inherit. So JHD is considered juvenile. There's an adult form and a juvenile form. The juvenile form is what we're talking about today. That's for people that have an onset prior to the age of 20 and usually have CAG repeats of over 60. So your student has 72 repeats. So she fully is in the JHD category. Thankfully, only about fewer than 10% of the people with Huntington's disease have the JHD form. The JHD form is a lot more aggressive. It seems to progress a little quicker in our young children. than it does in adults. And it does bring a lot of different symptoms than maybe adults would experience. So JHD and HD for that matter will affect movement, memory, and mood. So they will have changes in their thinking. They'll have difficulties with movements. And then they will sometimes have psychiatric and behavioral disturbances as well, that school and or family will need to sort of provide a structured environment of which they can still live independently and be safe. Some of the progressive symptoms that you may see in your student is stiffness in the legs. I know she doesn't have a ton of the physical changes right now, but you could see them later. So stiffness in legs, sometimes clumsiness in arms and legs, just like the inability to really be able to like control a movement. So if she gets really excited or she's frustrated or stressed out, she could have just weird, I don't want to call them weird. They're not really weird. They're not her fault. They're involuntary movements that, you know, it may accidentally like go out and hit someone, or her leg may shoot straight out, things like that. They'll just be weird. But if you asked her to do it again, she couldn't, because it's all involuntary. She will have changes in her motor functioning. So that's going to be identified by slurred speech, so difficulty understanding her, and that will continue to get more challenging as the disease progresses. And the same muscles we use to swallow and to eat our food are the same muscles we use to talk with. So if she's having more slurred speech and more difficulty talking, she's also going to have some swallow difficulties as well. So that is something to look for. We talked about the involuntary movements. It's sometimes called chorea. That's what they call dance-like movements that happen, or the stiffness is called dystonia. Juveniles with Huntington's disease will have a decline in cognitive functioning. So, you know, the skills that they maybe learned, you know, early on in their school career, they may lose, and they will not be able to regain that. They'll have changes in behavior, so their ability to adapt and to be flexible and to address changes within the school environment or even the home environment becomes more challenging. They also can have seizures, and it sounds like, I think Autumn has had at least one absence seizure that I know of. So she could eventually have seizures. Usually they're going to start out a little bit more mild. Absence seizures are, you know, of the seizure family, right? They're considered like more of the mild ones, but their eyes can flutter, they can lose their balance, they're likely not to remember it. Usually happens pretty quickly, usually within about 30 to 45 seconds, sometimes less than that. And a lot of times it'll just appear that they're kind of spaced out, looking out into the, you know, like looking through you if they're looking at someone. And then they don't usually respond to outside stimuli right away, just because they're kind of, you know, in a different world, if you will. So if that does happen at school, there's not a lot you can do to prevent it. That's the doctor's job for medications. But if she does seem to not be responding the same way that she normally does, just make sure she's sitting down, she's in a safe place, she's not in a chair that she could fall out of or anything. And then just make note of, you know, what date it is, when it's happening, if there's any kind of interesting environmental stuff happening around her that might be worth noting, just so that we can share it with her doctor specifically, so that they can look for medication that might happen. Other behavioral and mood disturbances do also happen with juvenile Huntington's disease. You'll notice, we'll go to memory changes. So they will have difficulty learning new skills. So if there's new computer programs, books, new rules, new kids in class, new teachers, anything that's sort of new is going to be a little bit more challenging for her to learn. She's not going to get it right away. She may get it eventually, but it will be a little bit more challenging. They can get easily overwhelmed and be distracted. So if there's a lot of what I call chaos, and I don't mean like you're not managing your class chaos, but I just mean like lots of noise, or kids moving chairs around, or kids switching from stations, or more than one teacher. Anyways, something different that's going on in the classroom that can be very distracting to the brain. If you think about it, we're all managing and processing what's going around us right now, so we can hear the noises around us, you can hear the people around you, and your brain is processing all of that information all at once. And Autumn is also trying to process that information, but her brain just works a little differently than ours. And so it gets harder for her to process. Her processing is slower than someone her respective age. And so it just makes it harder for her to focus and to pay attention. So if there's a lot of what I call just in general chaos going on, or just a lot of stimuli, if you will, around, it could have, she could be having trouble focusing and she can get overwhelmed. And if you're one of her paras, you might then get frustrated with her because you are human too. So you may have to just sort of recognize the environment and be like, maybe we can go to a quieter place. She will eventually have decline in school performance. And that's just because she's not going to retain the information as well as she might be doing now. Her handwriting is going to decline. She's not going to be able to sort of manage and organize herself in the same ways. So if you do start to see decline in school performance, that's probably an indication that things are changing for her. And the question always is like, how quickly does it, things change, or is she going to be, progressing? I don't really have an answer. I think science says people progress at like 0.0% a year or something like that, which is slow, but with kids, it's different. And, environmental factors play a role, home factors, medications play a role. So I can't really predict when she's going to quote unquote change or have more changes. Some of the physical changes, you're going to see changes in speech, like ability to do hand-eye coordination type tasks, riding a bicycle, throwing a ball. Some of those things are going to get more challenging for her. She may still try to do it. And as long as it's safe for her to do, you should allow her to still try to do it, but it's just not going to be the same as it was before. So she will have difficulty performing a sequence of movements, like dressing, bathing, and some of those things. So she will need more assistance with those things. So for you in the school setting, it's going to be more like she'll need assistance with toileting. If she does have to change her clothes for PE, she may need more assistance with changing her clothes for PE or putting on appropriate shoes for whatever they're doing. And then also helping her with like writing and or doing any computer work. She'll have her walking will become a little bit more wide-based, and you'll see it kind of looks like she's bouncing off walls sometimes if she walks with juvenile Huntington's disease. They look like they're going to fall all the time. Believe me, I'm terrified every Friday when I see patients. But surprisingly enough, they don't often fall. I mean, they can fall, of course, but so she'll have a little bit wider base. If she does lose her balance, it will be more challenging for her to catch herself just because her reaction time is slower. So that message from the brain, from the muscles to the brain, to the brain, to the muscles about like, oh, we're falling, put your arms out or whatever, don't get there. For their sake, it's actually better that they don't, because then they don't tense up and then they don't usually break any bones or anything. That's not always the case, but most often. So like if I go to your school and I trip on something and I fall, guaranteed I'm probably going to break an arm or a leg because I'm going to tense up and try to catch myself, which is not the way you're supposed to fall. So technically, of all of us, Autumn is the one that's falling correctly in this world. And sometimes our juvenile Huntington's patients will shuffle their feet a little bit more, so they don't take as big of a step. So they are at greater risk of tripping over things like uneven walkways or roots that might be sticking up out of the ground and things of that nature. So sometimes you just have to point those out to them just to let them know, like, go around that or step over that, and remind them to lift their leg a little bit higher. Yeah, she'll need assistance getting on and off the bus. If she's doing okay now, I mean, it's great to let her try, but someone should be standing by just to assist her. For example, if she doesn't get her leg up high enough and she clips her foot a little bit on the school bus. And then if there are, I don't know if there's seatbelts on school buses anymore. They were not when I was in school, but if there's seatbelts and things of that, she's going to need help getting, those taken care of. And the biggest thing is she's not necessarily going to be able to identify dangerous situations or understand, like, if she goes and runs here and there's a big old tree or a fence or something that's in a dangerous area, or a puddle of mud, or, strangers around, she won't necessarily be able to identify that as a risk for her. So she will need people around her that can help her sort of assess risky situations and help her find, other resolutions and other ways around whatever the task is that she needs to do. Mood and symptom changes, the juvenile Huntington's or Huntington's, well, actually life in general, most of the country is depressed and or experiencing anxiety through no fault of our own, but that's just part of living life. And that's no different for someone with juvenile Huntington's disease. They will have some hyperactivity. So if they get excited, they will get exceptionally excited, a lot more excited than maybe the rest of us might get. And if they get really sad or depressed or frustrated, they will get more sad and more angry and frustrated than maybe some of the rest of us. There can be some hypersexuality. I don't know if Autumn is having any of that, but she's Autumn, you're 17, 18.
She just turned 17.
Just turned 17. So, she has the same hormones as any other 17-year-old. So, of course, she wants to be like other 17-year-olds who are exploring, the opposite sex or maybe the same sex. But they're just exploring that sort of side of who they are. And so she might as well. And again, she won't necessarily be able to identify risky behaviors or dangerous situations. So she will need someone to sort of help her manage that a little bit. They can have some obsessive thinking. So it's more like they get something stuck in their head and it's stuck on repeat. And she's not doing it to be annoying or to be difficult. It just happens to get stuck in her brain that, whatever it is. It's usually something pretty trivial, but it gets stuck and she'll kind of ask the same questions over and over, or she'll keep mentioning it. It'll just be hard for her to move on. So then she needs family and or friends and or school personnel to help her sort of move past whatever she's thinking about at that moment in time. So this is the age-old question. Is it the disease versus normal changes versus the urges of just being a teenager? Yes, yes, and yes, is really the only answer. Could it just be normal teenage behavior? Yes. Could it be the disease? Yes, we blame JHD for a whole lot of things. So it's really hard when something changes. That's usually an indication that something's going on with her. So anyways, it's really hard to tell. So it's mostly a process of elimination of like, okay, something's different. Something's not working as it did maybe yesterday or 3 months ago. So let's try to see what's going on. And so with the help of her mom, her family, her doctor, and school personnel, you guys can try to figure out, like, is this disease progression, changes that are happening, or is this something that's just kind of like she's being a teenager? Obviously, you want to look into just making sure that she's not susceptible to using substances, or being vulnerable to someone giving her something, telling her that it's okay to take. She, again, wouldn't necessarily know it was risky. And any of these changes can disrupt family, school, social life. So as London will be able to tell you way better than I, life changes on a pretty rapid basis. What worked yesterday is not necessarily going to work tomorrow, or 3 months from now, or 6 months from now. And so you're constantly trying, you have a moving target. So you're constantly trying to figure out what works best. For any of the movements that she's having, you can do, obviously you can go to the doctor for medication. If she is having more movements at school, it's important to note like when those movements are happening, and potentially if there's outside stimuli that might be contributing to it, like she's getting excited or she's getting frustrated, and let her mom know, London know, so that she can take that information to Dr. Napolis to see if medication would be appropriate. But she eventually will need safety devices at school. So, she may need a walker at some point or a wheelchair at some point. Canes are not usually, or walking sticks are not usually fantastic for people with Huntington's disease and juvenile Huntington's disease specifically, mainly because, they kind of become their own tripping hazards, especially if you're having movements in your arms and you set it down right in front of where you're going to take a step. So those aren't the best, but safety devices in place, chairs with armrests. I couldn't think of the name, but chairs with armrests might be something that she needs, so that if she is having any movements or anything and she does accidentally like slip one way or the other, she's not going to like truly fall out of the chair. If you have a physical therapist that comes to the school or is at the school, if they can work with her to do range of motion exercises, basically just keeping whatever muscle strength she currently has, keeping that in place for her. Obviously fall prevention. If she is having falls at school, it's important to look at the routes that she is taking. If she's walking across grass or fields or anything, that's probably not the best option for her. Or if she's walking on paved walkways that are maybe more gravel based, those types of things, probably not the safest. So if there's other more concrete, smooth, not a lot of changes in elevation, will be best for her. And then like I said, there's medication, and London can tell you if she gets on any of that stuff. So the cognitive and symptom management, you just want to provide a stable and predictable routine as much as you can. You guys work in a school. I understand, like, life happens. You can't have everything stable and predictable all the time. But if Autumn can have a daily schedule, and you can offer her environments that have minimal distractions and noise levels, that will be best and most optimal for her to learn and to do her tasks. And then she'll need reminders. So sometimes, it's creative reminders up on the board, or piece of paper in front of her, different things to help her stay on task and remember what she needs to do. And then sometimes if she really is having a difficult day and struggling, she might just need someone to like help reorient her and let her know like what she's doing, to stay on task, those types of things. The behavioral and psychiatric management. So obviously medication is actually pretty useful for psychiatric symptoms like depression and anxiety, irritability, and anger outbursts. Assuming that they're caused by the degradation of the brain. Now, if the behavior or the psychiatric symptoms are more based on environment, medication is not going to help that, right? Because medication does not resolve the environmental issues. So some of the coping strategies is she could do therapy. Her therapy is going to be different than like the therapy that you or I would go to. But just having someone that she can talk to on the school campus about frustrations or challenges or things that she might be going through, feelings she might be having. There's support groups and education events that she can go to, or you guys can go to get more information on just like ways to help her cope. Environmental strategies, exercise. The more tired we are, the less impulsive and irritable we all get. So if she's exercising, that's going to be a good thing. So if she is getting frustrated, or overly excited, or just struggling, having a day, as we all do, sometimes going for just a simple walk outside, hear the birds, listen to the leaves move in the wind, take a couple deep breaths, and then return to the environment can be helpful. We do want her to stay socially connected with her peers and her school personnel. So we don't want to isolate her by any means, because that is not going to be helpful for her. Social interaction is what's going to keep her engaged. And we also want to make sure that she gets adequate sleep. I mean, don't we all need that? None of us are probably getting it, but we need it. For her, for the management of the sexuality stuff, this is for mom, but she would be managing her menstrual cycle, I don't know if she's having one, or using contraceptive to sort of keep that more consistent. Just educating Autumn, about sex and about risks and things of that nature. And then if she is having any inappropriate sexual behavior, having conversations with her, not obviously in front of other students, but pulling her aside and having one-on-one conversations to sort of redirect that. A lot of our JHDers love to hug everybody. Sometimes, people are not huggers, so they might go in for a hug to someone who doesn't want it, and then, that's problematic. So it's just about redirecting her and helping her identify what's appropriate, who's appropriate to hug, when it's appropriate to, I don't know, expose yourself, like when you're going to the bathroom type thing. Medication can help with some of this. So if there's a lot of this going on, you can talk to Dr. Napolis about it. Medication is not the end all be all for this type of stuff. It's more environmental strategies and things of that nature. Other medical issues is choking. So if she is choking on liquids, using a straw can help minimize that, but she will need to be reminded to use a straw. If she's used to drinking out of a cup that doesn't have a straw, she's not going to remember to put a straw in it before she takes a sip. So she will need to be reminded. Food consistency may need to be modified. So if she is choking or coughing, then she will need to have thicker, more like think yogurt or smoothie or ice cream, milkshake, those types of consistencies. So you don't want a lot of different consistencies. So things like broth-based soups are going to be really hard for her. Cereal and milk is going to be more difficult because you have thin liquids with chunky, crunchy things, and her mouth is just like, I don't know how to navigate all this at the same time, because some of it's rushing back to her throat and causing the coughing and or choking. And while the chunky pieces of the food, that sounds gross, but the chunky pieces of the food, she still has to chew anyway, so it makes it hard. She will need more calories than most of us, well, than all of us. You will want her to get her high calorie food, but you'll want her to have frequent snacks. So she probably needs about 3,000 to 3,500 just to keep her weight maintained. That's hard to eat at 3 meals a day. So usually our Huntington's persons will do better with having smaller, more frequent meals. So like eating every couple hours, that will also help with their energy level and their focusing. Communication, I think she's doing voice banking, correct, London? Yeah. Eventually she will need electronic communication devices, whether it's speaking for her or her just being able to answer questions using a communication board or an app or whatever they use these days. She will need that eventually. And then hand gestures. So like, you could teach her if you wanted to, but you'd have to do it now, like sign language for like, thank you or more or eat or, those types of things that are simple ball, so that she can communicate even when it becomes more difficult for her. JHD should not prevent her from being able to go to school or having a successful educational experience. Yes, she's not going to school because she's going to go to college and, become a, world-renowned physicist or anything. I mean, she might, but that's not really the goal of her education. So it is important that we still try to give her a supportive school environment so that she can thrive and, have a quote unquote normal-ish childhood. Some of the different needs are going to be obviously the IEP school accommodations. So her assessments and needs and abilities, obviously, I think it has to be once per school. I don't know what the laws are, but anyways, once per school year. But for someone with JHD, it could even be more frequently, like once every 6 months, or even as needed, just to make sure everything is still working correctly, both for Autumn's needs as well as, teacher needs and school personnel. You obviously want to have realistic goals for her. Her, learning, I don't know, algebra and geometry and some of those things, maybe not super realistic, but she can still do some other things like the independent living stuff that you're doing is probably really fantastic for her. Personal care things of that nature. If she can be placed near the front of the classroom or near the teacher, that will help her with focus and concentration, because the kids that are behind her or in front of her won't be distracting her. If you break assignments into smaller direct steps, so if you tell her like you want her to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, she knows what you want from her. Now, is she always going to remember, like, okay, to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you have to go to the pantry and get the bread and get the peanut butter, and then you go to the fridge and you get the jelly, and then you get the knife to spread it. Oh, wait, and I need a plate too. Like, there's just lots of steps involved. So for her, you kind of do, okay, can you go get the peanut butter for me? And then once she's finished that, okay, now can you go get the jelly, or whatever it is. So just breaking down into smaller, more digestible steps is going to be easy for her. The more simple you can make the information, obviously, the better. Calendars and checklists are really good for our JHDers, just because it will help them, give them a visual reminder and a written reminder of what it is that they need to take care of. And then it also help them remember what day it is, what class they go to next, that type of things. Putting directions in writing and giving her verbal cues is going to be most helpful. For her test, she may need them read to her, because it may be a little bit more challenging for her just to read it and understand what it is that you're asking. So she will need someone sitting with her just to kind of go over and make sure she understands what she's reading. Like I said, she'll need help writing things down. And then she will need help with like scissors and classroom equipment, like computers and things of that nature, as needed for completing assignments. For her personal care, she will need help cutting food, or unwrapping food, and or using utensils. She might be able to use them right now, and that's fantastic. Eventually she will have more difficulty with her fine motor skills and holding forks and utensils, so she may need help with that. And then she will eventually need help with toilet hygiene if she doesn't already. So like, she will need help making sure that she gets adequately cleaned after using the restroom, as well as making sure she, gets her pants down or her skirt down and without, going to the bathroom on them. She also will need help with like setting up kind of a toilet schedule, if you will. Because the muscles aren't sending the messages as consistently and as quickly as needed, she sometimes could have accidents. And again, it's just because she doesn't, all of a sudden when she feels like she has to urinate or go, have a bowel movement, sometimes she's had to go for a long time and she can't make it to the bathroom on time. So a lot of times what our schools will do with our JHDers is have a toilet schedule or a bathroom bio break schedule, where they maybe go into the bathroom every 2 hours at the top of the hour, or every hour at the half hour, or whatever it is that works for your school personality is fine. But just to avoid accidents, because that's obviously very embarrassing for her, but it's not her fault. She can't, the bladder just wasn't sending the message on time for her to get there. And then if you have speech, occupational, or physical therapies on school grounds, any of those are going to be fantastic for her. And those will also help you with equipment needs and what will help keep her safe. Obviously, if you have nursing, nursing is helpful. London can talk to you about what medications she's taking and potential side effects and all those things. It looks like she has a lot of paras, which are awesome. However, might be kind of confusing for her. If she's doing okay with that many paras right now, that's fine. But as the disease progresses, it will get more confusing for her to remember who she's working with and, have their personalities gel. So having 1 to 2 aides that work most consistently with her on a more frequent schedule. Obviously, I understand people get sick and that can't happen all the time, but any new change, whether it's a new teacher, a substitute teacher, a new para, whatever it is, any change is going to make her brain work a little bit harder, and it's going to tire her out and could potentially cause a little bit of frustration for her. So if you start to see that happening more often, it could be because there's, a lot of turnover with either teachers or paras or the school personnel that are working with her. Stress and excitement. I mean, it makes us all, irritable or increases our anxiety. So the more you can manage the stress and excitement, the better. Now, you guys are all human. You can't do that all the time. But if you do know that there's going to be, I don't know if there's oral presentations in the classroom and stuff, and people are going to be moving a lot, or if people are going to different stations in the classroom, and it's going to be like one of those days where it's just a little bit different in your classroom, you might want to see if you can find a quieter place for her to work so that it's a little bit more consistent with what she's used to. She will need what I call brain breaks, so just a quiet place to work and have minimal distractions. She might even need a quiet place just to like stare off into space. I mean, we all need brain breaks throughout the day, right? So she'll need them more frequently than the rest of us. She will need a little bit of adjustment to sort of lighten the load. Maybe if all the kids are getting a 25 question test, maybe she only gets a 10 question test or something to see what she knows and how she's retaining this information. Just because it will take her longer to do it, and you do want her to be successful. We certainly don't want to make things so hard for her that she hates coming to school. She will need extra time to complete projects. She will need assistance with the reading and the understanding, help getting organized. Most kids need help getting organized, but she definitely would need it. And then as the disease progresses, she might not even be able to complete the tests as you normally have them assigned. So it may just be finding other ways to, to see whether she's completing her tasks or retaining the information, those types of things. So eventually some of my JHDers that they don't take any tests at this point, they kind of just do in classroom with the paras, sort of one-on-one just to see what they know or what they're retaining. Equipment. So here's the thing with equipment. You got to introduce it early before they need it, because I don't know if any of you ever used a walker or have a walker or have, family members that use a walker. It actually takes a lot of coordination to use it correctly and safely. And if you have a cognitive impairment, like someone with Huntington's disease, giving it to them when they need it, it's too late, because now they don't know how to navigate it or how to learn to work it. So you kind of want to introduce things to persons with Huntington's or any cognitive impairment early so that they can learn to work it. So for example, her communication technology, if you're going to use apps for her to, answer questions, or a communication board of some type, or any of that, you're going to want to introduce it to her, preferably now, but early, so that she can learn it and that she knows how to navigate through it, and so that she doesn't have frustration with it later on. Digital books are also really good. So it could be that she, reading is going to be difficult, like for her to, follow it and stay on task. So sometimes giving them the book in front of them or whatever it is, and then having them also listen to it on a digital device is going to be most helpful to help her retain and to remember what's happening in the story and things. And then special seating, chairs or wheelchairs to maintain comfort. Like I said, armrests or reclining type chairs so that she doesn't fall out of it. Other possible interventions you might need to do. Her and London are obviously very well connected, her and mom. So if she needs to speak to her mom throughout the day, is there a way that you can say, like, yes, you can speak to your mom, when you need to, you come to this person, you ask to speak to your mom and we schedule it, or this is the time that you have to speak to your mom, and you have to remind her what time that is. If there's staff that she really is connected with, that she can talk to without getting in trouble. So say whatever impulsive thing comes to her mind, but not necessarily get in trouble for that. Taking a walk and a break, she should do that with somebody, not necessarily by herself. A quiet room, calm location for her to just sort of relax and take a few deep breaths. Again, with someone by her side, but not someone that's like harassing her. I don't mean harassing her, but talking to her and, frustrating her more, but just someone that's just going to sit there and make sure she's safe. Distraction is good for all of us, definitely good for people with Huntington's disease. But so talking, if she is really worked up and having a hard day or frustrated with something, talking about things that she enjoys. So, animals, traveling, dancing, her butterflies, all these things that she loves, music, to help calm her down and just redirect her and get her out of that frustrating situation. She's not going to be able to do it herself. She is going to need someone to just sort of like help her through that. We talked about noticing changes, whether it's normal changes, hormonal changes, or disease progression. So if you are seeing an increase in behaviors that you didn't previously see in her, you should explore changes in the environment. So if there's new peers, new teachers, new classroom, new friends, changes at home, anything like that, we should look to see if all of that is the same, then you can move on. Medical assessment will also help identify if there's any motor, cognitive, or behavioral health changes. So if she is having inconsistent mood, difficulty expressing herself is completely normal. So she may not be able to verbally identify what is wrong. And usually if they are very frustrated, they, meaning Huntington's persons, are very frustrated, or not able to express themselves, they obviously get really irritated, not at necessarily any of us, but just in general, because they can't express themselves. And usually what comes out are some hurtful things and not so nice things. And it's important to remember that's the brain damage. And just to kind of calm her down and really see where she's at and go from there. Usually they don't mean the hurtful thing. They don't usually remember even what they said, 5 seconds ago, much less 10 minutes or 2 days ago. So it's important. So if she is sort of starting to have some verbal outbursts or anything like that, it's important to get her out of that environment and into a calm environment to see, is this something that we really need to address, or was she just getting frustrated and just having a verbal outburst that she couldn't control? Essentially, if the thought comes in her mind, it's pretty much going to come out of her mouth. And it's just because that filter that the rest of us sometimes have, or hopefully have, is stuck on off sometimes with our Huntington's patients or our persons with cognitive impairment. So again, it's important to remember that it's not usually personal, and that it's just out of frustration and not being able to express themselves. She will have an increase in falls and almost falls. So she's having that. It's really important to document when she's falling, to look at the environment, and then also to see if there's any equipment, or let mom know so that she can talk to Dr. Peg about if medication is appropriate. She could have an increase in impulsive behavior, basically fight or flight. I mean, she's human like the rest of us. So she does have the normal anxious fight or flight situations where if she starts to feel like she's pushed up against a corner, or she's in danger, or something's not working for her, she will go into fight or flight. And as you know, any of us that go into fight or flight, we don't always remember what we do. We don't always remember what we say, and we don't usually make the best choices. So if that starts to come out, like I said, get her into a more calm environment and out of the situation that she's in. She will have changes in her ability to process and retain new information that she previously achieved. So if you do start to notice that she really is not catching on or being able to retain information that she previously had, you might need to adjust the tasks and or the assignments for her a little bit. Safety is obviously, of the utmost importance, I'm sure, for you guys. So simple rules and goals for her. Like I said, quiet place for her to eat. If she is eating in the cafeteria with other students, I'm just thinking about the days when I was in school. It was always very loud and very distracting. That will increase choking and coughing for her, because she could be paying attention over here and taking a bite and not paying attention to chewing and things. So she may need sort of a more quiet place to eat or withdraw from after an emotional or challenging situation. She will need someone to check in with her pretty frequently, about just sort of how things are working for her. She is vulnerable, as most kids are, but she's vulnerable, especially to being picked on or bullying and things. So, if people can just have eyes on her and make sure that none of that is happening, and then check on her and just make sure that, all her friends are treating her with kindness, and the other students as well. We talked about equipment already. She may need helmets and knee and elbow pads eventually. Usually they don't get to that point, because usually by the time they get to that point, they're in a reclining wheelchair and it would be difficult for them to fall out of. But that could be something else that you might want to consider if she is having more falls. Avoiding triggering persons. So if she's, avoiding triggers. So if she's tired, she's going to be a little bit more impulsive and or irritable. If there's any changes to the routine, or like I said, excessive chaos or stimuli, any change in staffing, sometimes food can cause them. So if like she's mostly just eating, I don't know, candy all day, that can make changes too and be a trigger for some behavior changes. If she says that she has to go to the bathroom and she has to kind of wait, waiting is not a skill set of most of my Huntington's persons, mostly because once their brain tells them they need something, they feel like they need it right then and there, and they don't have that ability. Like 5 minutes to them feels like a year. So, any of those delays can cause her to get frustrated and potentially have behavior outbursts. Excessive noise is another trigger. Huntington's persons, I don't know why, are really susceptible to temperature changes. Like they have difficulty regulating their temperatures. So sometimes they'll be wearing like 6 sweaters when it's, 95 degrees outside, or they'll be wearing shorts and a tank top when it's, snowing. So that might be something that Autumn has experienced or will experience at some point. But so temperature can also be a trigger for Huntington's person.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
Christina. Hey, I just wanted to let the parents know, if I know it's 4 o'clock, and if you guys need to head out to pick up kiddos or whatever, feel free to do so. Sorry for the interruption, Lisa.
No worries, no worries. So anyways, we don't want to isolate her. We do want her to still be part of important school activities or social events. So if there's a way that she can have a special task to participate in, an all school event, or a play or something she wants to be part of, that would be helpful. Obviously, she can't do it just like the other students do it and participate the same way, but if she could participate, if you can find a special way for her to participate, she'll love it. And then if she can also get awards and rewards for accomplishing jobs or, achieving a goal on her IEP, whatever it might be, those are going to be helpful to encourage her and help her continue to love school. So like I said, for teachers and school personnel, sometimes it's really hard to identify this, I know, but recognizing that someone with JHD is usually not lazy or acting up on purpose. It's usually just part of the brain degradation that's happening. So there's usually, not all the time, but almost all the time, there's a trigger that can be identified to help address the situation. And are you going to be able to find the trigger by yourself? Probably not. So it takes a village, as they say. Same with JHD, it takes a village. The more you can have patience and understanding. Now you're human, you have bad days too, I get it. But if you can try to have patience and understanding when you're working with Autumn, that will be the best thing for you. She will be forgetful, and she's not usually doing it to make you mad. She's going to take longer to respond. So if you're stressed out and you're sort of in that space of like, you need an answer right then and there, maybe you can delay your interaction with Autumn because she will respond slower and we don't want to stress you out more. She might, when she's fatigued, she's going to get easily exhausted and can make her symptoms worse. So you might see her get more stiff, or see her a little bit more spaced out, or she might get really emotional. So there might be some different things going on there, but usually it's just something that's going on. And if you can figure out what it is, that's the best. And then I don't know that this works for any kids, but when you say try harder, those two words together is not really realistic for someone with juvenile Huntington's disease. And really, it's just a matter of trying to find a different way to maybe teach her or to get her to understand what it is that you're trying to say. So it's just changing your strategy. I understand you guys are human. That can be tough sometimes. But as much as you can. Try to just see if you can find another way around to get to the same solution, just because things are going to be harder for Autumn. And then this is just about talking with about JHD with students. I don't know if you guys do that or let them know what Autumn has, but just letting them know it's a genetic illness, it's not contagious, they can't catch it, and that it's not Autumn's fault. She didn't do anything to cause this. This was something that she was born with, and so her brain just works differently than the rest of us. It's a disease that impacts the brain, affects how she moves, thinks, and feels, but she's still human and she still needs to be treated with kindness. And if you can do things to help, help her sort of get through the day successfully, that would be most helpful. And just letting them know to have a little bit more patience and grace with her if they can. And then, if she is, if there are kids that are picking on her, if you can assign other kids that can maybe talk to the picker, if you will, and sort of stand up for her and protect her and stuff, that would go a long ways. Also letting them know it gets worse. So if she leaves, when summer break happens, she'll come back and she'll be a little different than she was, the year before, and just letting them know that could happen or that will happen. And it's an illness that that unfortunately will not go away for her, that we don't have a cure, but the scientists are working really, really hard to try to solve this problem. And her mom is advocating also, well, so is Autumn, really, really hard to get the FDA and scientists to start working with JHD specifically. And just letting them know that she deserves patience, understanding, and kindness, just like any other human being would. How kids can help her and befriend her is just asking her to sit with them at lunchtime, or inviting her to join activities or projects that they might be working on, saying good morning or waving to her. She may not be able to say good morning back, but they can wave or smile at her, giving high fives when they see her do something cool or something maybe she didn't do before. If any students see situations where people are being mean or unkind to her, letting them know that they need to report that to school personnel as soon as possible. And obviously, have the students look out, like if someone's touching her without permission or pushing or shoving or calling her names, then that needs to be reported right away. I don't know if London has given you this particular book, but this is our JHD handbook. And has lots of the information that I've been talking to you about in here. These books are actually really good. They're usually broken down into different things, so you can look up like if she's having depression, or if she's having verbal outbursts, or if she's having different symptoms. You can look up and they'll give you specific strategies to help address that issue. And then these are just some other resources for you. She doesn't, Iowa Center of Excellence is where she goes because it's obviously closer to her, but you can go to the HDSA Center of Excellence at UC Davis webpage. That's that Health UC Davis EDU thing right there. We have lots of resources on there. You can email me. I'm happy to get you in touch, or get you whatever information you feel like you need. The Huntington's Disease Society of America is really good. They have a lot of written resources. The Huntington's Disease Youth Organization, I like their website a lot. They have an area for kids, specifically for parents and for professionals, which you would fall under. And then Help for HD also has lots of resources. So there's lots of resources out there. So if you're struggling with, something, whether it's a symptom or behavior or whatever it might be, reach out and we can probably help find a way, or someone else has probably found a way to address the situation so that you don't have to, reinvent the wheel or bang your head up against the wall for a long period of time or anything. And here's the thing, I've been doing that. I don't think I told you guys this, but I've been here for 13 years. And I learned something new about Huntington's disease and JHD almost daily. So just when you think you have it sort of worked out and Autumn figured out, she's going to change things up on you. And that's just the way it is. It's not, she's not doing it to be mean. It's just life.
Autumn, you want to say thank you? Thank you.
You're welcome, sweetheart.
So there you have it. Gosh, what a great presentation. Lisa did such a great job. of explaining juvenile Huntington's disease and what these kids are going through. And I really hope that the teachers learned a huge lesson about juvenile Huntington's disease and what Autumn is going through. And I hope you guys maybe learned a little bit about what Autumn's going through as well. I think sometimes as parents, it's hard for me to describe the symptoms because there's so many of them. Clearly, that presentation was an hour long. But there are so many symptoms, it's hard to explain every single little thing in detail and how to manage that. So I hope that you guys all, again, found this video helpful, and I hope you enjoyed it. So until next time, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. We love you, and we'll see you. Peace out.